Okay, guys, we are back for another installment of Supreme Leader Haughton's history class. Today we are going to be looking at technological innovations. So what this means is we are going to be spending some time looking at a bunch of the new inventions that occurred from about the Revolution all the way up to the Civil War, right? So like this 100-year period, all the new technology. I'm definitely excited about this lesson. I think it's an easy lesson, but there are a lot of star questions about this topic. So it's definitely a lesson like if you pay close attention, you will definitely get 3 or 4 questions right when we go to war on this star exam. So technological innovations, which really means all the new inventions. Add it to your table of contents and let's rock and roll. Okay, so our mission today is very, very simple. We're going to be doing 2 things. First, we're going to take a look at all these major inventions and we're going to break them down. Like, what are they? What do they do? Why do we care? After that, you're going to sort of evaluate their effects. What that means is you're going to sort of grade these inventions, right? Like, if you had to rank them, which invention was more important to the country than the other ones? So we're going to break them down, then we're going to grade them. All right, let's go ahead and jump right in. So as we talk about all these new inventions, I wanted to go ahead and give you the name of this time period. So this time period when all these new inventions, all these new innovations are coming about, it's a time period we call the Industrial Revolution. And it's happening all over Western Europe, so England and France are going through it. The United States is a little bit late to it, but that's okay. And it's essentially happening from the 1770s, right? So sort of the American Revolution, all the way up until the 1860s when the Civil War breaks out. This 100-year period is all about change. And that's why we call it the Industrial Revolution, right? Industrial deals with technology and factories. Revolution deals with big change. And so what happens is all these new inventions, all this new technology, it changes the way we make goods, right? So the way things are made. And it also is going to radically change how people live. Because all of a sudden, we're going from making things at home, right? So like you make one pair of shoes, you make one shirt, to now all of a sudden, you can make hundreds and thousands of those things in new factories, right? This is big, right? The world changes. And what you're also going to see is not only will you see industrialization, right? People using factories, you're also going to see something called urbanization. And that's where people move from their farms and their rural areas out in the countryside. They start moving to the urban areas known as cities, right? And they're moving very simply because they want new jobs in those new factories. And you can sort of see that in this picture, right? Like if you kind of go down to the bottom, you see the factory, it's big, you see all the people coming into the factory on their horses. You also see the pollution and you see the city developing behind it, right? So it's a time of new change, right? It's a revolution, an industrial revolution. Okay. One of the great inventions that sort of makes the Industrial Revolution possible is the steamboat. Okay, it was invented by Robert Fulton in the early 1800s, so it's one of the first inventions at this time. And what it does essentially is it makes it easier to trade and to travel. The word we use for this is efficient. That means better, faster, easier, safer. Steamboats are very efficient. They can move a ton of goods, they can move a ton of people, and because they're steam powered, steam, right? Hot water, right? Steam powered. They're able to go upstream in a river. And this is going to make it very, very easy for people living in the Midwest to trade and travel to the East Coast and up and down the Midwest. You're going to see a lot of these steamboats traveling up and down the Mississippi River, of course. Okay, so first big invention, steamboat by Robert Fulton. Another great invention happens a little bit later, right? So this is like 1840s-ish. You're going to see us invent railroads. And of course, this makes travel far more efficient, right? You can travel faster, you can move more items, you can travel safer. And we already know, with railroads, people are going to be moving west even more. Because now, it's not going to take you a month or two to get to California. it might take you 2 or 3 days. This is revolutionary. That's why we call this the Industrial Revolution. Railroads change the game. They make our country smaller because now you can get from one side to the other like that. Another major invention, the steel plow. This is going to make it easier for farmers, right? Like, you can dig up the ground a lot quicker, throw in those seeds, right? It makes farming easier, faster, and cheaper. And if you think about it, that's what all these inventions are doing, right? Like, they're making life potentially more efficient. You can do more quicker. A little bit later, Samuel Morse invents the telegraph, right? And this is sort of like the precursor to the telephone. And what happens is the machine uses a system of beeps to send a message, right? So different beeps at different times mean something else. And you can telegraph a message like SOS, which means send help. This machine makes it far easier to communicate even though the country is really huge. This is a game-changing innovation by Samuel Morse, the telegraph. Let me go back real quick. Matter of fact, when you think about the telegraph, the system of coding that we call it is actually called Morse code, right? So that system is actually named after the guy who invented this machine. All right, moving on. Another great invention, canals, right? And so a canal is very simple. It's a man-made river. Let's say you have a place where a river and there's another river, but like, how do you connect those two rivers, right? So like, you sail down one river, then you got to take your stuff off the boat, put it on a horse and buggy, and then move it to the other river. Why not build a river connecting the two? That way, you never have to move the things off the boat. Of course, this is going to make transportation far more efficient. You're also going to see increased population in cities, right? Because people can actually get to the cities. So this is big. And here we see the Panama Canal in South America, and we see a massive trade ship moving tons of goods back and forth. We're actually going to look at some images of this, right? So if canals are kind of confusing to you, the pictures will make more sense. So let's take a look at this first picture, right? So we see North and South America, but here's the problem. Look, we have the Atlantic Ocean over here where my cursor is, and then you have the Pacific Ocean over here. But what if I want to go from Europe is over here, and I want to sail across and I want to go to Asia, which is over here? I would have to go all the way, sorry guys, I have to go all the way around South America, right? That is gonna take forever. So what can we do? We build a man-made waterway. We build a canal. We cut through the land, and where we actually built this one is right here in Panama. It's called the Panama Canal. It essentially connects the Caribbean Sea and the Atlantic Ocean over here with the Pacific Ocean over here. Makes trade and transportation and travel so much easier. That is a canal. Another way to explain this is to say, let's say we got the Mississippi River, right? And then if you notice, we got these lakes, and then we have the Hudson River that leads to the Atlantic. The problem is, let's say you go from the Mississippi River, then you got to put your stuff on a horse and buggy. You got to, sorry guys, you got to move it to Lake Michigan, sail across Lake Michigan, but then you got to get on land again, right? It's way too much. So we build a canal. Let's connect the Mississippi River, connect the canal to Lake Michigan, collect the canal over here to Lake Erie, another canal to Lake Ontario, man-made river to the Hudson River, and boom, New York City and the Atlantic Ocean. It makes it so much faster to move items and people. Canals, okay, man-made rivers. Another invention we're going to look at is known as the cotton gin. This one was one of the earlier ones. It's 1793. So I didn't add that in there, but go ahead and make that a bullet point. 1793. It's invented by Eli Whitney, and what it essentially does is it makes it easier to pick the seeds out of cotton. This is major because when you pick the seeds out of the cotton, it's so much easier to pick lots of cotton. And what happens is, we talked about this, right? Before, the three cash crops were rice, tobacco, and indigo. But after this, now that you can get cotton so much easier, cotton becomes the fourth cash crop, and it is going to become the big daddy cash crop. In the South, people will call it king cotton. Once Eli Whitney makes his cotton gin, you're going to see plantation owners growing a ton of cotton. But there's a downside. Whitney thought this would make it easier for slaves. Backwards. With the cotton gin making cotton production so much easier, you're actually going to see slavery, increase, because plantation owners realize something. I buy a couple cotton gins, I buy a couple more slaves, and I can get a ton of cotton really, really quickly. So it actually has the opposite effect. This invention makes it so much easier for plantation owners, it's going to increase slavery. Eli Whitney, cotton gin. Okay, and here's an image of a smaller version, right? So you put the cotton in, crank the machine, and it separates the seeds. So you get seeds on one side, and you get the nice soft cotton on the other. Another great invention is the McCormick Reaper. And so just like the steel plow, this machine makes it easier to farm. And what it does is in the name, right? When you reap something, it means you're taking something. Think about the Grim Reaper, right? He comes and he collects souls. Well, this reaper, it collects the food from the plants, right? So it collects the plants from the ground. That makes more sense. So it makes it easier to farm, right? The McCormick Reaper helps you collect the crops. Interchangeable parts, another invention by Eli Whitney, right? So he's a great inventor. And when I think about interchangeable parts, like the first thing that comes to my mind, imagine them as like old school Legos, right? And so what Eli Whitney was like, he was like, look, we have all these machines, let's make them use the same parts. That way, if the machine breaks, you just replace that part instead of the whole thing. For example, Mr. Houghton's car breaks down because his tire is flat. Do I get rid of the whole car? Nope, I just get a new tire. Tires are interchangeable, right? Let's say my PlayStation 3 breaks, right? But it's a fan issue. The fan is not cooling it down. Well, do I get a whole new PlayStation 3? No, I just replace the fan because the fan parts are interchangeable. This invention just makes it easier to fix things. And so if it's easier to fix things, you can make more things. So Eli Whitney's interchangeable parts, another game changer. The steam engine is the next innovation we're going to look at. This is invented by James Watt, and of course, if you've had science, you know who he is, because the measure of energy is named after him, right? The watt, the kilowatt. And what it does is, it essentially makes it easier to make things in factories, right? We use the steam engine in boats and trains, and steam power is able to turn other machines, and so the power of steam helps us to move things. And so here we see in the factory, right, they're using steam powered machines to turn other machines. So very, very powerful invention. Of course, James Watt. We wouldn't have the steam boat without the steam engine, and of course we wouldn't have the first railroads without the steam engine. Textile mills. This is a new, not necessarily an invention, but rather a place. These are the first big types of factories. And a textile mill makes clothes, right? And that's what textiles are, fancy word for clothes. And so these are the factories where we're making clothes. And what happens is, we're no longer making clothes by hand. That takes too long. We're making clothes in mass production, right? We're able to make so many of them at a time. Now, if you take a look at this picture, you notice two groups of people working here: women and kids. Some of the first factory employees are going to be women and kids. This is both great and horrible, right? Lots of women and kids will die in factory accidents. Horrible. But women are also going to start talking to one another, and they start realizing, hey, we're working in these factories, we deserve more pay. And if we deserve more pay, we deserve more rights. So this is something that sort of comes out of the Industrial Revolution. Women are going to start demanding more freedoms because now they're starting to work and earn money. So random. We'll talk more about that later on in the unit. Okay, now that we've got all those amazing inventions during this crazy time period, the Industrial Revolution, now that we've looked at them, you're actually going to spend some time underneath your notes and you're going to categorize them, right? So go ahead and make a small little chart, label it transportation, agriculture, manufacturing, and communication, and go ahead and put the different innovations into the correct category. You can go ahead and pause the video and then unpause it when you're ready. Okay, so the first category you should have had was the transportation category. I think this one was pretty self-explanatory. You should have had railroads, and you should have had the steamboat, and of course canals. That's what you should have in this category. Next category, agriculture. There are several here: the steel plow, as well as the McCormick Reaper, and the cotton gin. Under manufacturing, you should have had textile mills, steam engine, and interchangeable parts. And then for communication, you should have had the telegraph. Perfect. Now, what I want you guys to do is rank the inventions, okay? And so what you're going to actually do right now, go on to teamhoughton.weebly.com, and there's a discussion board, and I want you to go ahead and answer this question on the discussion board. Okay. Now it's time to jump to our independent practice, and you essentially have two tasks here. The first one is the exit ticket. Okay, so that one I'm collecting today. The second one you're going to do right behind your notes, and I want you to imagine yourself as the host of the Technological Innovation of the Century Awards. I want you to give out the following awards: Innovation of the Century, second place, third place, honorable mention. You can even add in your own awards. Think about all those great inventions during this time period. Which ones were the best? Okay, you have the rest of the class period. Make sure you get that exit ticket done because Mr. Houghton's collecting it. All right, guys, have a great day. And of course, your life work will just be the Industrial Revolution reading.